Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. So glad to see you with us again today, when it is our pleasure and a thrill to have as our guest Zakiya Dalila Harris, who has a smash bestseller on her hands. The book is The Other Black Girl. We'll talk all about that. It's a novel, and it's described as a thriller, a horror tale, social commentary. Well, I will tell you that it is extremely entertaining and even spellbinding. And it is her very first book. It's already bought up by Rashida Jones as a Hulu movie. So what can we say to follow that? Congratulations, Zakiya. I mean, I was telling you just before we started, what a class act. Everything about this is just terrific.
Thank you. Thank you. It is such an honor to be here with you, Carol. I can't believe I'm sitting here in the chair talking to you. So thank you for having me and thank you for reading.
Oh my goodness. It's just terrific. Now, so I've already put out horror, mystery, theater, social commentary. How do you describe, this book? And then we want to hear how you came to write it, that all of that came out of this young woman. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, as you said so beautifully, it is really a mashup of a lot of different things, a lot of different parts of me. I say it's horror tinged, a workplace thriller, but also suspenseful. It really depends on who I'm talking to be honest. But really, that really leaning into, of course, the thing we say is Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada, because I really wanted to get at a lot of similar issues that are talked about in Get Out, of like, the well-meaning white liberal, all of the subtext, all of the things that are beneath the surface. But then also, of course, like the thriller aspects, and with, of course, Devil Wears Prada, what it's like to work in a workplace and be a young person, and that work-life balance and how you navigate that. So I was, of course, navigating that myself.
That's right, because it's about book publishing, and you worked in book publishing, so you got firsthand.
Yes.
I noticed that where you worked was not exactly your publisher. I hope all is well.
No, I have to say, I'll go into my own experiences, but I have to say, everyone I worked with has been so supportive of this book, which is weird in a lot of ways, I think.
Right.
I know this book's about publishing. I worked in book publishing for 2.5, close to 3 years. And it wasn't as bad for me as it is for Nella in the book. My protagonist, Nella, is the only Black person working at Wagner Books, a prestigious publishing house in Manhattan. I didn't have it that bad. I wasn't the only one, but I was the only Black woman in editorial for the time I was there, for the most part, only full-time worker.
Yeah, which is not an unusual situation, and we'll talk a little bit about how it may have changed in the last year or so.
Yes.
But certainly, and my history, which is why I love this book, was, that if a Black woman was hired, there wouldn't be another Black woman hired for maybe a decade.
Nope, you're done. You're done. You check off the box,
right?
You move on. And I think in a lot of ways it still is that way, or at least it was. And you mentioned we'll talk about how last year has changed, I think, some of the conversations for the better, I hope.
Right.
Yeah, but being one of a few is still very difficult. And I'd been there for a couple years. We hadn't seen a lot of change happen in terms of how we would look at employees, why I was the only one. Seemed crazy to me that I was, and to a lot of other younger people as well. But there's definitely, I think, in publishing, and it stretches to a lot of spaces in media and beyond corporate America, really, of this sense of like, this is the way it's always been done, and it's working for us. We're still, at least we're publishing books by Black authors, so like, why does it matter? I mean, no one said that to me, but I do feel like, that diversity, that frontward facing diversity be enough of a reason why, like, that conversation about talking about who was behind the scenes didn't need to happen. And so other thing about it is, like, I think with books, you kind of think, oh, this is this very benign, kind of beautiful thing that exists for good in the world, which is so true. But also when you think about who's behind the scenes, who is deciding who's getting published, who's getting a book deal, whose voice matters, like that affects everybody. And so I wanted to really show that to readers too, of like, you know, this really benign seeming, and it can be beautiful industry, but also how it can be kind of cultish in a way. You kind of feel like
Right.
go with the flow, and what that looks like for a young Black person.
So I love the character Nella, who, you know, discovers that there is another Black woman, you know, and is thrilled, you know, in the beginning, and then it goes south, or seems to.
Yes.
So talk to us, you know, a little bit about that, because too, you explore the relationship, if there is another Black person, you know. And I thought about this last night when I was watching my grandchildren watch a game show, and
Hmm.
of how upset they were when the Black woman who was in the contest didn't win. You
Yes,
know,
that
one
was
of them
me.
just started bawling, you know. I mean, the
Yeah,
identification. So talk to us
totally.
about the the identification process.
Yeah. I mean, I was the same way. I remember distinctly watching Game Show Network with my cousin, and us doing the same thing. Whenever we watched the show, we always ended up cheering for the Black person.
Right.
And I think, you know, I was really thinking about truisms that we have. As Black Americans, as community, of this idea that we are really supposed to look out for each other. I know I grew up in mostly white spaces in Connecticut, like my character. So I still remember, though, at home with my parents, my family, having this strong core, this strong, like, education of my history, where I came from. My dad always nodding hello to other Black people who, you know, happened to walk by. And like that was something that was always in my mind. But then, of course, as I get older, it's not always that case. Like, we are not always looking out for each other. And there's another kind of idea that's brought upon us by outside forces, for the most part, that we have to compete. Once you already have a Black person, you don't have to do anything
Right.
else, as though
Right.
that's enough. And so how those two things compete, for, you know, to those things competing within a person, and Nella has to navigate that, especially not having really had the Black community, the Black friendship, until later in her life, like she does with her best friend Malika. She didn't have that foundation. So when she sees Hazel, she's like, yes, like dreadlocks, you're from Harlem. Like, I wish I'd
Right.
had your life in a lot. Like, I wish I'd grown up around Black people the way that you did.
Right. And then, well, we don't want to give away, because
Yeah.
I want everybody to read this book, because, you know, it's really incredible. And I think that well, let's talk briefly about the parts of it that seem not to be based in real life, so to speak,
Yes.
you know, but the imaginary part of that.
Uh-huh.
What took you in that direction to tell this story?
Yeah, I've always loved genre in general, like horror, thriller, sci-fi as a consumer. I grew up reading lots of things, but Goosebumps is what was one of my favorite series as a kid. I would like trade Goosebumps books with other boys in my grade, because a lot of girls at the time were not reading Goosebumps. Um,
Right.
and like The Twilight Zone, that's a show that my dad and I and my sister used to watch every New Year's Eve on Sci-Fi. And I just love that idea of this space where it seems like everything is of our world, everything is normal, but then there's just, you keep peeling back and there's more and more and more.
Right.
And
Right.
so that is something that, you know, when I had the idea, it was just the idea of two Black women in this very white workplace, and something's off. And playing with that idea of, okay, what's going to be off? Who's behind it? What is causing all of this to happen? And figuring out how to really make that fun and exciting and scary was really such a fun challenge for me. But that horror aspect comes from like my love of horror movies and TV.
Right. Well, it's a terrific. So you get everything in one book, and it's well worth the read. But I want to talk a little bit about the fact that this book went to auction, And the reports are that it sold for over $1 million. And if I'm correct, this might be your very first book. You know, so talk to us a little bit. But we do want to say that you have an MFA and you have studied writing and you were in book publishing for a reason,
Yeah.
to absorb this this process. But talk to us about why you think. I mean, we know it's a great book, but why you think that the bidding was so fierce, and then the bidding for the movie version of it was so fierce as well. What, how do you explain that?
Yeah. I sometimes still am like, what? How did that happen?
Like, what was
And
that, $1 million?
I it's just it's last year was such a wild time too, because that happened, and then of course the pandemic happened like the month after that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have to look back on the conversations I had, and I met with a lot of publishers. All of it unexpected for me, because I think a part of me, I knew when I talked to people about this book when I was working on it, I got good feedback from like non-publishing people and publishing people, but like mostly just like people in the world finding it interesting. But I did worry in a little way that like publishing wasn't quite ready for it yet. And I didn't get, when I was looking for an agent, the reception was not nearly as like yes as when I was looking for a publisher. So when it was in publishers' hands, the thing that was really struck me was that everyone said that they saw themselves or parts of their own houses in the book. So not just where I used to work, all across the board. And that really was interesting to me, first of all, that they would admit that, and that was something that really spoke to them, and that they also thought would speak to other readers. So that I think could be part of it. And then I think also just the genre element makes it an easier book to talk about, I think, because of that.
Right. Well, remember last year, which was, well, I think the number is still at like 5% Black participation in book publishing. It hasn't moved that greatly, although we know we have Black women who, like our friends of the show, Jamia Wilson,
Right.
Lisa Lucas, who are now, in at big houses and making progress. But there was a huge strike last year. Like 1,300 people just stopped working and said, we're fighting white supremacy in the book publishing industry, just that clearly. So, I mean, it was incredible that, you at that time, where were you in the book writing process when all of that happened?
Yeah, so gosh, I remember that because I'm still in touch with most of my good friends that I worked with who are still there, and then also not still in the world. So I was very much kind of getting up to speed on everything as it was happening. I was in the process of edits. So book sold, my editor and I had a chat, and I was working on the book again, and she was giving me notes. So I was still in the, I think I was in the sweet spot, honestly. Like I wasn't starting it. But it was also hard because of course around that same time, George Floyd, like that all came from, well, not only the protests, but I mean, it's a long time coming. But that was the thing that was really, I think, fueling that strike and those conversations. And I just remember it was a hard year. It was a hard time. And I thought how amazing that was, and that people were speaking out about it, and in these concrete ways, because I mentioned in the book the town halls, the diversity town halls that happened. They weren't as bad. I exaggerated in the book, but like those conversations of like, we're not going anywhere with this. This is just so we can say we did it. So I hoped that was a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. But it's hard to know, I think, until we're all in the same room. Because I think it's easy to tweet, and I think it's easy to, say you stand with this kind of, I stand with this hashtag or that hashtag. But I think until people are having these conversations face to face and like talking about how can we make this place not just diverse and inclusive, but like how can we keep people and make them feel like they can grow here and have a career.
So Yeah, but with your success in this, there's the writing of it, there's the finding an agent, there's the talking with the mainstream publishing houses, then it's everything else, selling it, to, in your case, to Hulu for a
Mhm.
series, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so in all of those spaces, like Nella, I'm sure, you're looking around and saying, where are the other Black women, Black people, who can really, in an informed way, judge this process and participate in this process. So
Yeah.
talk about that, because it's such a huge, Audra, our producer director, talked about how your book arrived, the packaging, so classy and, really first rate. So your whole process has been top drawer. So talk to us.
Yeah, yeah, no, I have really had a great experience so far. I mean, the book just came out. It's wild to think that, but have had a really good experience. My team has been, I mean, the thing is that this book literally deals with that sense of publishing being so white that certain books do not get the treatment that they should be getting, right? And so
Right.
there's conversations about what it means to have a Black editor with a Black author, and the because it's so literal, I think a lot of that got any possible conversations that might have been hard otherwise if the book was not specifically about publishing, at least hard for me. Speaking up honestly is something that I'm still finding my way of doing. Definitely
Well,
got
this is pretty powerful, speaking up.
Thank
Great.
you. I know I have to, but I think having worked in publishing, having known the process, I feel I know the language, I know the tools, so I know how to advocate for myself in ways that and a lot of other authors of color might not know how. And so I know that's also a benefit I've had, but that hasn't even been an issue because the book deals with these things so literally that my team from the get-go, I mean, my agent and I made an entire list of Black artists for the cover, and they went out and they made it happen. Talked to Temi Coker, a Nigerian artist who I believe lives in Texas. He created the artwork for it and then allowed us to license the image. And amazing artist. Highly recommend checking him out on Instagram or Twitter. But they took that, and this cover was like in the first round of they just got it. They got the whole
Right.
message, and
Right. So that's another piece of it,
yeah, yeah,
that was very well done with, in your case. We're talking about who does the cover. Well,
yeah.
I think I read that you actually created the cover yourself, one of them in the early stages.
Oh yeah, that was my that was my like attempt at distracting myself from something else. I was like, hair, but even then I knew I wanted Black hair, and it
Right.
somehow, and now it's like it's there. You look
Right.
at it, you know what this book is about in some sense, and I really wanted that for Black readers.
Right. And the book that's published in the UK has a different cover, but
Mhm.
a comb as well. And
Yes.
what is the story of the significance of some of the missing teeth? Is that,
Yeah.
symbolic of?
I mean, the way I see it is the pick that so the pick itself is this whole unit, right? Every tooth needs to be intact for it to work.
Ah,
And I kind of see the broken picks. I mean, besides just being visually unsettling, I also see them as representing Black thought and the ways in which we are fractured for better and for worse. Like we're not a monolith, but also how that is in conversation with the fact that we also do have similar experiences and we talk about oftentimes the same things with Black hair. We at least, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's hard. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but you know what I mean. Like
sure,
it,
sure.
yeah,
I get it. No, that's, and hair is the thing.
yes.
So beautifully handled in the book. I want to ask you about a couple of current events. Naomi Osaka, who,
Yeah.
stepped back from the media
Mhm.
press
Mhm.
because of mental health issues.
Yeah.
You know, we have so many instances where Black women, Black girls, I mean, Naomi is a, you know, I still think of, I mean, they're so young,
She's so young.
you know, and under this extraordinary pressure. And then when you see some of the things that were said, have been said about her, or and about Kamala Harris, and about any other Black woman who is in the public sphere, it is just extraordinary. And so the book
Yeah.
goes to the, you know, to that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, of like really having to tune out sometimes, having to kind of decide what you're opting into and whether or not you should take care of yourself and not worry about what other people think. I mean, that's something that I think of now just promoting the book, right? It's like a pressure. I mean, I'm not Naomi Osaka. Incredible. Um, but I do think that, and with, yeah, with one of the characters in the book, I won't give too much away, but that's also a thing of what's said and how that has repercussions. And that happened in a time before now, so social media wasn't even a thing, but just the pressures that we have always been under, in some way, shape, or form, in any profession, really, like the being criticized anytime we make any kind of comment about an honest comment, an honest opinion. So I definitely see that, and I'm hoping that, I mean, I mentioned I've had a hard time sometimes speaking out, in my personal life, but I'm hoping that this book really inspires young Black women, young Black people to think about that and to be okay talking about how hard that is, because I also think we kind of keep that in a lot of the times. Black people in general, I know me and my friends, we talk about this, of how we have sometimes a hard time like being vulnerable and being like, I'm struggling right now, because we're not allowed to. And a lot of times, like, we have to be tough and just work our way through it. And so I'm hoping that opens up conversations about how we navigate being, I mean, we're always public
Right.
figures, as we're always being talked about in some kind of way, and how to.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will. You know, it's the strong Black woman, the strong Black girl, not really perceived as a girl, you know,
Mhm.
as adult, you know, and you know, and seemingly with a culture able to at will insult and demean, you know, Black girls and Black women.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an incredible thing. Now, I watched your preview on Good Morning America because Robin is going to interview
I'm
you.
so excited.
I know. I mean, I'm excited too. That's a great, great thing. And I've already signed up for your Juneteenth book event with Rashida Jones. And this to me, you know, the collective that you're doing this with, you know, the Black bookstores, it's another piece of this whole pipeline,
Yes.
you know, that is so essential and that you are lifting up in this event. So talk with us, you know, about that. Independent Black bookstores. I'm
Yeah.
I'm delighted to know that Human Books is coming back. I mean, they have, you know, branches that are opening in New York City, you know, which is a
Mhm.
famous, you know, Black bookstore that went silent for a while and will now be alive again. But
Yeah.
talk to us about this collective that you're doing for the Juneteenth celebration.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's incredible. I Black bookstores, independent bookstores have been so good to me, and so just even last year, before we had to cover social media, the feedback about the deal, feeling like this is a moment for all of us, and so yeah, I mean, just having this event for Juneteenth this year, after the year especially that last year was.
Right.
I think that this will be a really nice time for us to just bask in it. Just, talk about this book, talk about Black people, Black women, how a lot of times in the book world, I think Black people get marginalized, we're pushed to the side and don't get as much attention. I think specifically for booksellers, I think booksellers, a lot of times it's a thankless job, even though they deserve all of the thanks because
Right.
of what they do. So really having the chance to come together like that is going to be really
It's
something else.
going to be sensational. I wanted to register before it got sold out, you know.
Yes,
Whatever. So,
yes. It's very
so
smart, but I still would have made space for you.
thank you, Zakia Dalila Harris. The book is called The Other Black Girl. It is fantastic. Go to her website, Zakia Dalila Harris. There's another Zakia Harris, believe it or not, but right, so you have to make sure you get that one and register for, and you'll be able to see where she's going to be appearing in person and on television. And watch out for Hulu for the, you know, for the show. Zakia, thank you so much. It's just, you know, it's so refreshing to be able to share this conversation with you and to know the story of success, and we'll be, you know, telling everybody about it. So thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you again for having me. It was such a pleasure chatting.
Oh, great. And thanks so much to you all out there for watching. I'm Carol Jenkins. The show is Black America, and we will see you the next time.